Now, it's a common meme among our own dear chattering classes that good old Blighty doesn't really matter anymore. So it was rather reassuring to learn that Kremlin-backed troll farms spent thousands of hours on social media, hiding behind false names, spewing out all manner of nonsense, trying to influence the outcome of last year's referendum in the EU. They even employed countless bots and cyberbots to create fake news, which is probably why it came to the attention of our very own Maybot, who this week accused the Russians of weaponizing information and mounting a sustained campaign of cyber espionage and disruption. On the other hand, her bro in the White House said he believed President Putin when he claimed Russia was not meddling in Western elections. Well, that pretty much settles it, I think. Of course, you couldn't blame Mr. Putin for taking an interest in our elections, where the outcome is still uncertain, whereas the Russian ones, well, they're pretty much a foregone conclusion these days. One key tool of Russian propaganda is the Kremlin-financed RT, the channel formerly known as Russia Today, but renamed in the hope we'd forget the R stood for Russia. And, of course, rubles, lots of them, which perhaps explains why Alex Salmond is now on the payroll of Rubles Today. Or maybe not. In this era of fake news, can we ever establish where the truth lies? Here's RT's Afshin Rattansi with his take.
Yes, Comrade President. So to summarize your daily update, Russia will organize Britain's exit from the European Union by the 29th of March 2019. Our Manchurian candidate is in position at the White House. He's making good progress. And partisan Carl Puigdemont, he appears on Comrade Alex Salmond's new RT show today to teach him how to break up the United Kingdom as he did so in Spain. Paka, President. What you saw there was part of my daily briefing with the Kremlin. Now we have these stories for today. We can use armies of Twitter trolls, plus my show going underground, to destroy the minds of Western voters so they no longer understand democracy itself. One Moscow mule, please, and don't skimp on the Siberian ice. Theresa May used her Lord Mayor's banquet speech to peddle the conspiracy theory that Russia is trying to undermine the Western world order using Twitter, Facebook, and RT. This is the real fake news. Millions of people voted for Brexit, Trump, and Catalonian independence because after the wilderness years that followed the 2008 global financial crisis, they wanted to exercise their democratic right to reject the status quo. It's insulting to say that discerning voters were brainwashed by photoshopped memes and fake news promoted by Twitter bots and Facebook trolls. It's also arguably a pathetic political ruse by Theresa May to distract the media and voters from the chaos going on within the Conservative Party. The plotting and power grabbing is emanating from the Palace of Westminster, not Moscow. And as for the new Cold War that Theresa May appears to say is on the horizon, by resurrecting a new Red Scare for the internet age, it is she who risks drawing a new Iron Curtain. Is it any coincidence that countries who blame Russia for political outcomes that offend elites are neoliberal, NATO-aligned nations? States that lie outside of this axis do not blame Russia for anything. And please leave RT out of all of this. All we do is try to create the best journalism to inform, educate, and entertain our audiences with stories often overlooked by mainstream sources like the BBC. No one tells the Going Underground team what to say or do, let alone the Kremlin in Moscow, which all goes to show how egregious are the attempts by the Western establishment to clamp down on the freedom of speech of British journalists working at the RT headquarters in London really are.
And our thanks to Novikov Restaurant and Bar for letting us film at the beautiful Mayfair Lounge. And Afshin Rattansi joins us now. Welcome to the programme. Now, why are you in denial that Russia has been meddling in Western elections when the evidence that it has is overwhelming?
It's overwhelming, as you say. In the past few days, though, the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson was clear. He said not a sausage as regarding any evidence of Russian meddling of any elections here in Britain. Why did Boris Johnson change his mind? That's the question.
So, during the referendum, those thousands of Russian-based accounts that posted 45,000 Brexit messages in 48 hours and then just mysteriously closed down after the referendum, we're just meant to believe these were ordinary Russians with an itinerant interest in British politics.
I think you make a good point, and maybe we should have another referendum.
You want us to believe that? Do you think we came up the Thames?
I don't represent Russia here.
In a boat.
And if indeed there are these bots that you claim,
yeah,
then what is your argument following that?
Well, but you're denying it.
I'm not denying anything. I don't know whether they're Twitter bots or not, do I?
Well, you cannot deny that there are Russian-based accounts have tried to interfere or meddle in the American election, the French election, the referendum, the German election. That's clear, isn't it?
Well, no, Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said there's not a sausage.
Never mind Boris Johnson, I'm asking you.
He's the Foreign Secretary. I mean, observing this from the outside as a journalist, it is obvious that there are great power plays between great powers, and these have existed for centuries. So, presumably, different countries are seeking supremacy at the moment. But as regards
Russia
Brexit,
does use,
you seem to be suggesting
Russia does use social media.
How do I know?
To influence. How do you know? You're with Russia Today.
But that's like saying to you, because you're at the BBC, the state-mandated BBC, you know about Theresa May's policies and what they do. Shall I just attack British policy through Andrew Neil?
I do know about Theresa May's policy.
Right.
I do know about them.
So why
you don't know?
Yemen?
You don't know about the Kremlin-linked Russian Internet Research Agency.
Yeah, you're right.
You do.
Okay,
you don't know about it.
No, I honestly don't. What do you mean?
And you're a journalist.
Where are you getting this information from?
Everybody knows about
when you say everybody,
it's interesting. It's called the IRA. It's the one that puts. Let me just show you a picture of what came through from this agency. This was put out by a Russian social media, trying to make out that this Muslim woman cares little about what happened on Westminster Bridge, the terrorist attack. #ban-Islam. And it comes out as if it was an American Texan Lone Star.
Right.
It's a Russian.
Now, I can't confirm this, but I can say I was in the midst of that.
Do you approve of things like that?
Of course not. I was in the midst of that attack. Our journalists were risking their lives in the middle of that attack. We were the first camera crew on the scene, beating CNN, Sky News, and BBC
that's not the
to
point.
cover this. So what are you talking about?
The people that pay your salary are putting this sort of stuff out.
How do you know that?
Because I know where it comes from.
But how?
It comes
so you're
from
saying the Russian
Internet Research Agency.
And where's that information?
It's a Kremlin-linked agency.
Who's
Everybody
telling you that?
knows that.
Who's telling you
It's well established.
Sorry, what is well established? Everybody knows. Last time I was on your show,
in the past 4 weeks, there have been 4 academic studies showing where this stuff comes from. Are we right to be? I mean, is this meddling serious, or does it not matter?
Well, I think the questions are, to what extent is it coordinated and to what extent is it effective? And I think there are some doubts about those two questions. That it is happening, there is absolutely no doubt. And I think Afshin would have been on stronger ground, and at one moment he appeared to move to the stronger ground in really saying that everybody's at it. That is a plausible
way of saying
that. I think that is a stronger argument than saying that it isn't happening.
I didn't say it wasn't happening. I said the Foreign Secretary said it wasn't happening.
It seems to me that there are questions as to whether it has yet been effective. But that it could be effective in the future, I think, is very much in play. That is a strong possibility.
Well, I mean, Michael makes a good distinction there. There's no question it's happening. It's quite hard to measure if it's had any effect.
I think the Russia Today point is a bit of a red herring. There is a news broadcaster in Britain which is regulated by Ofcom. They have to meet our standards of the way they do things according to our law. The issue is what's coming out of the Kremlin, and it's not clear it's effective. It's definitely happening.
Hold on. Russia today has been censured 15 times by Ofcom.
Well, and that's a bad thing. And of course, they've got to
Just
play
as
by
the
the
BBC
rules.
has been censored, your political editor has been censored, Channel 4 has been censored 4 times.
But the point of the
Ofcom is an
but the
agency
point is
that
that they've got
censored
to
all broadcasts.
but they have to play by the rules and the law. The Kremlin doesn't. I think the bigger question, as well as simply fake news, is some of the allegations we've seen about the hacking of emails in Parliament, or attempts to put viruses into computers in the NHS. There is an allegation that comes from the Russian government as well. I've got to say just one thing. The only thing which was really incredible in your interview was the idea that you cite Boris Johnson as kind of a credible.
No, well, he's done it 3 times, so that's a sign of
absurd.
desperation.
I mean,
you say that Russia today is just
RT for
yeah, all right, rubles today we'll call it, has it just does journalism like the BBC. You did a
I would
report.
say it does very journalism different to the BBC.
Yeah,
I do think
well,
the BBC
I'll give
does.
you an example of it. In
benefit elites.
2015, your channel claimed the BBC staged a chemical weapons attack in Syria.
No, it didn't.
For a news report.
No, it didn't.
Russia Today did.
No, it didn't.
You were censured by
No, it
Ofcom
didn't.
for
You're
it.
quoting different sources about this story. This is what happens with RT.
You digitally altered the words spoken by an interviewee to stand up your story.
Well, certainly Going Underground didn't. RT UK didn't.
I'm talking about RT. Your channel also has peddled endless conspiracy theories that 9/11 was an inside job. That's
What
not
do
jour-
you? I mean,
that's not
do you think I
journalism.
think that's the case? Do you think anyone of the team here at RT
No,
UK
you're on the channel that
has that
peddles
just
it.
made the case very clearly? We are regulated by British government agencies.
Yeah.
So if anything of that kind was found to be egregious, then of course we would either be fined or taken off air. Other stations
As
are
press
censored.
as the Iranian channel has.
Exactly.
So
I
you
mean,
must be
we
on
don't
the,
have a First Amendment.
You must be on the
but the issue is
the
what's coming
brink
from
on
the
that, are
Kremlin.
you not?
But Laura Kearnsberg still kept her job despite hitting out at Jeremy Corbyn wrongly, according to Ofcom.
Laura Kunsberg is a fine journalist. We're struggling to find any at rubles today. Sorry, Ed, what were you going to say?
I was just saying, isn't the issue what's coming from the Kremlin and what effect it has? It's definitely divisive, as we saw from that tweet. It's potentially very disruptive if it's true that this is coming into the NHS
How do you know it's coming
computers.
from the Kremlin, though? I think this is why the James Bond theme in this program is rather good. You really are of all a Cold War mindset, especially with Britain leaving
When
the
you said
European
we're all
Union.
at
You've
it-
got to make new friends with China, with Russia,
Isn't that what you
with
meant?
Brazil, with India. You've got to realize that just these stories that appear in the papers telling you that the Kremlin put that tweet out. Why are you believing this?
Can we just add one thought that despite what Afshin says, with the strength of evidence that the Kremlin is interfering in electoral processes in the West, it is simply extraordinary and very worrying that Donald Trump chooses to believe Putin without any question, to denounce 2 former directors of the CIA, and to give the impression that he's a man, one would almost say, responding to some kind of fear of blackmail.
You were a
from
former
Russia.
British Defense Secretary. You don't see the value of détente. Right now, Moscow could destroy this studio in a few minutes. Likewise, Britain could do the same to Moscow. You don't see any idea that Donald Trump moving closer to making deals with Vladimir Putin, perhaps over strategic arms limitation, is a good idea. You obviously don't understand what is at stake here, then.
I don't think it is a good idea to deny what is obviously the case, which is that Russia is interfering in electoral processes in the West.
Well, that's your allegation.
That limits the credibility of the president and also leads to the suspicion that he is a frightened man in some way.
I mean, the whole point of Russia today and the election meddling done in social media is all focused to undermine our faith in our democratic institutions and to divide us, as we've seen from the tweet that we put up on the screen. Why do you want to be a part of that?
Part of what?
What I just said.
How am I a part of what? Sorry, what do you mean?
Because that's what it does. I mean, I went onto your website before we came on tonight, and they're all stories that I try to undermine our
The
faith
British
in
Medical
our
Journal on
society.
economic warfare by Theresa May's government.
They're all trying to divide us. You give prominence to Catalonia, to Scottish independence. You're trying to divide us. I understand why the Kremlin wants to do that. That's perfectly legitimate from its point of view. I'm just puzzled as to why do you want to be part of that?
I think one of the first rules of journalism, the way I see it, and certainly I've practiced it here at the BBC and at CNN and other outlets, is that the famous phrase, truth to power, we tell our journalists, think of the poorest person watching. See what their lives are like and try and show what life is really like. Not the way, arguably...
What power have you spoken to Mr. Putin?
There have been so many shows about rights in Russia today. What are you talking about? You don't watch the channel. So you haven't seen debates about homosexuality, about Syria, complaints about Russian atrocities in Syria. You haven't watched it. All you three are doing is you're frightened of a new entrant, especially when Sky News may be closing down, your old employer Murdoch may be shutting that down. You may be left all alone here at the BBC. RT may be the main news provider here, who knows?
Well, on that bit of fake news, we'll call an end to
You know Murdoch better than I.
Thanks for being with us.